We are starting just a few minutes late because we are all even a year later into this pandemic, still trying to figure out Zoom. So while some folks come in, I just wanted to give some brief background of our amazing panelists. They're all absolutely gems. And just tell you about what I was thinking when I began to organize this event. So when I began to organize, now named Successful-ish, because I thought that was a lot cuter than our previous name, which was Getting on Track for Success, First Generation Attorneys Edition, I thought about what are some of the key things that as a first generation attorney, I truly struggle with. And it comes back, even though I'm in my 6th year practicing law, it always comes back to the same 3 core issues, which are how can I, crush my career goals? And then second, what do I need to do to make sure that I can retire comfortably? And not just that, be able to live and enjoy some of the fruits of my labor, because who wants to save all of their money? We want to spend a little bit too. And then also, how can I make sure that while I'm practicing law, I'm leading a meaningful life and making sure that I have my mental health at the forefront? And so in thinking about that, I asked these 3 panelists to come again. And the first panelist we invited last year, but she had to ditch us and send someone in her stead because a client, I'm sure y'all know, called Google came knocking at her door. So we were absolutely understanding she sent in her stead Julie, but this year we're excited to have Niki. And Niki is a career coach. Actually, she's CEO and a career coach at Practice Pro. And when I first met Niki, I was skeptical about what exactly a career coach did. I thought this is fraud or this is some type of scam. But then I invested in myself and reached out to Niki as I was actually organizing another HYLA panel, reached out to Niki, and all the things that she was talking about what she was going to tell HYLA was things that I needed to personally talk about. And so I started working with her, and she not only taught me the tools of, making sure I can take my career to the next level, but how to help myself. And so I think that is absolutely invaluable. And I think y'all are going to learn a lot from her today. The second person is Ann Miller. When I met Ann, I had already been working with a financial advisor, wasn't quite happy, didn't really know what that role was really supposed to be until I talked to Ann and was like, this is who I'm looking for. Someone that's like an aunt that will tell you, do this with your money, don't do this with your money, and you can trust her. What she stood apart from all of the financial advisors that I had ever talked to was that she wasn't trying to sell me an insurance policy. And also, she had already worked with a lot of young lawyers before she even began to talk to me. And so she really understood the things that first generation attorneys and any young lawyer deals with, like student loans. And then also, LaKendria Ellis. And so LaKendria is a little bit different than the other panelists because I didn't meet her last year. I met her, I guess, maybe 12 years ago when we were on campus at University of Texas, San Antonio. We're sorority sisters, and that's how we became close friends then. But now LaKendria is teaching thousands of her social media followers and clients, in-person clients, how to cope with issues that arise that concern mental health. And she, talking through me, knows that a lot of the things that may plague other professions, mental health also does for lawyers. So very excited to hear from all 3. I won't take any more time. I see we got 10 folks. I think that's a good enough number to get to the meat of it. So I will let Niki start.
Well, thank you so much, Kiara, for that kind introduction. Anne and LaKendria, it's so great to meet you guys. I'm so sorry that I couldn't make it to Houston last year or even participate like this, but hey, we'll make do until we can all be in person again. And I never really thought of myself as a career coach. When I left practice of big law, I wanted to create an education company and teach people the things that law school doesn't teach them. And when we realized that training is great, conferences are great, but people need that just sometimes that just one-on-one support, it's kind of one of those careers that chose me. I didn't even know that it existed. So Kiara has told me I have 10 minutes. And in 10 minutes, I'm going to try to share with you um, as many of my points as I can on what I think is going to transform one's career. I know many people, whether you are 2 years out or 6 years out, when you are working as a lawyer, you're stressed out. It doesn't matter if you work for a small firm. It doesn't matter if you're working at a big firm. It's like you have all these demands that the service profession imposes on you, and you might find yourself stuck. So let's get started. So the first one is, I'm going to call it, what you can't measure, you can't manage. So you know how they say if you're trying to lose weight, you should just like get on the scale and weigh yourself, or like write down your foods, uh, like your calories and things like that. It's the same principle. I find myself that as we get busier, and I am guilty of this just as much as anybody else, we don't make time to sit down and take inventory. Like, I don't sit down and just say, well, in my career, what skills have I built? What connections do I need? What are my chances for promotion here? Do I even want this promotion? What am I enjoying? What am I not really like prefer to do less of? Because it's through that self-reflection that, one, we can decide what we need to do. And nobody can do this for you but you, because you know yourself the best. But also sometimes, only when we take inventory, we can really see that we maybe we're even doing better than we thought. I know that I do not like doing the finances. I do not like to do the accounting. Every time you're during tax time and I sit, I'm like, oh my God, you're going to get an accountant. I'm done. But sometimes, only by doing it and I looking at those financials, I realize which part of my business is doing well. And it's a surprise. Which part that I really, really enjoy without any efforts is really blooming. So I think if you guys sit down and you just make a contract with yourself, whether it's twice a year when you go to the dentist, or every time you get your haircut, or once a year, calendar it and sit down and truly think about it and write it. Some of the most successful attorneys I know, in particular, this gentleman at Google, he does this the last week of every year. He sits down and I'm like, what are you going for? You have it all at this point. Like he is successful in every area of his life. All right, I know I don't have a lot of time. So number two, I'm going to call this one, check yourself before you wreck yourself. This is inspired by the Ice Cube rap song. I have found that a lot of my clients, as well as just my mentees, they are so miserable as a lawyer because of other areas of their life. They're not happy with their physical well being. They've maybe gained a lot of weight since law school. They don't have a good handle on their finances, which hopefully we'll hear about in a little bit. They have personal issues. I mean, we all do, but we have all this pain and trauma that have been piling on and on and on over the years. And now we're bringing it into our work life because it's kind of easier, right? It's easier. I know I have found myself, it's just easier to blame the work. When I was in big law, I just complained all the time about the hours, about the partners who didn't manage things right. And I'm not saying I wasn't right at all, but the level of pain that I was experiencing and the level of dissatisfaction didn't really accurately correlate with the stimulus, what was happening at work. It was really, I was bringing some of my patterns of self sabotage, throwing a fit when I don't get what I want. I was bringing it into work. And when I was in therapy and I was just working on something else, I suddenly, my therapist asked a question and I suddenly was like, oh my God, I think I also do this at work. So, when you're doing your assessment that we talked about, really think about the other areas of your life. Make sure, they are not oozing pain into your career, especially as we're getting to the middle of our career, we're also getting older, right? And being adult also means, a lot of things. Number three, role models. Don't forget about role models. There is a lot of emphasis on mentors and sponsors and advocates, and they're all super important. But I believe that sometimes, having a role model, someone that I can look up to, and it would be ideal to have one person that in every area of my life I can look up to. But many times that's just not possible. But someone that, whether it's at your own, organization or outside, um, that you want to litigate like, you want to negotiate like, you want to talk and dress like, you admire them because of the way they balance their life and work. So be on the lookout for that. I recently threw an event, one of our law school career conferences, and there was a speaker there. And she said she's a partner at a really large law firm, like Vault Top 10. And she mentioned she had 4 kids. And I was like, oh my God, if I want to talk to anybody, like, is she going to be my mentor? Maybe not, because we are in totally different trajectories, right? But in this regard, I want to know how she automates her life. Does she have a personal chef? Does she, uh, follow a certain morning routine? I want, in the area of balancing life and having it kind of all, I want this woman to be my role model. So sometimes our role models are not like, we can't, it can be like Oprah Winfrey. We can't become friends with them, or they don't have time to mentor us. But I think they are really important because they give us, they give us a light. They give us like where we want to go. And then we can use our mentors to help us get to that goal. But we want to have that vision of where we want to go. Next thing is challenge your assumptions. This is huge. Many times when I work with attorneys who have been out 4, 5, 6 years, they come to this session with me and they have all these assumptions. Well, because I went to X school, or because I only had straight B's, or I didn't clerk, I cannot do this. And it's settling in their unhappiness based on this assumption that because maybe somebody somewhere in law school, or even a speaker said something. But we all, to some extent, are just sharing our experiences, right? Until you have talked to multiple people and, you truly know that you know, what you've assumed is actually correct, it's really sad to foreclose certain areas for your career because you think you can do it. I have seen people who don't have a LinkedIn profile, who are 10 years out of law school, they've always been in house, and they think nobody's going to hire them at a law firm. And because of that assumption, they don't try. But within a couple of months, I don't do anything. I just tell them to just believe and challenge those assumptions. They go out there and they completely become a different person on the outside, and opportunities come to them. But you have to change those assumptions. And how do you do that? If you feel that, at least check with someone, go speak to someone, because if your assumption ends up being true, let's say that you are right, there are so many ways we can, you know, circumvent and still get you what you want. And that brings me to my next point of, I think Kiara touched on that, which is invest in yourself. Not just so much to, make more money or get a better job, but I think in my life, anytime in any area of my life where I've experienced progress, I've been happier. So Warren Buffett, that everybody knows, he's known to be really frugal, but he still says the best investment you can make in yourself. So whether it's you want to read a book in that area that you're weak in, go to conferences, invest in therapy, if I have definitely gone to therapy, and it's really helped me get a life coach, career coach, a personal trainer, personal chef, you know, um, invest in yourself and free up your time so you could really focus on the things you need to do, whether it's looking for a job and that you need to free up an hour a week so you can focus on that, or building a skill, or figuring out how to talk to your boss and really know if you have a shot here, or ask for the things and the opportunities you want at that same job. Many people change jobs, but then they end up unhappy at the next job because they take those same problems with them. And I'm not saying it's not the right idea to change your job. Sometimes it is, but let's make sure that if you have a specific problem with that specific employer, maybe by having a direct conversation and finding out what the problem is, maybe they're like, well, you're not a really good writer. And if it's true, if it's not a style issue, you can easily fix that. And whether you stay there or go on, have a much better career. And my final point is what I like to call first generation fatigue. I once sat across one of my law students who was, I don't know, 23 years old, and he was doing great. He would that excellent grades. He had employers all fighting over him. And he looked at me and said, Niki, I'm just so tired because all my life I've been the family member who makes it, who graduates high school, graduates college, is going to get a good job. I'm celebrated and I'm happy and but I'm just so tired. Why can't I have things handed to me? And I don't really think I could, like a genie, just like slap my fingers and his life trajectory changes. Sure, he can get mentors and he can make this path easier. But I think for first generation folks, what I have seen is that because we're the superstars who've made it, the pressure is makes us constantly compare ourselves to others. We don't know how to run our own race and celebrate our own accomplishments and say, well, you know what? Right now, I'm going to not live for the resume. I am going to go and maybe look at this other, legal trajectory that might set me back a few years, or, I'm going to switch. And the worst case scenario is I try it and I decide, well, I've tried it, I like it, but it's not for me. And you can always go back to the previous position. It's better to lose 1, 2, 3, 4 years and then come back with a full heart and truly give it your own. So don't live for the resume, and just live towards the goal you want. And I hope this was helpful. And I don't know how much over I went, but I'll stop right now.
No, it is absolutely okay. I was going to tell the attendees, if y'all like, after each panelist speaks, you can always send questions, or even during. And after they're done, I can ask them. Otherwise, we will be going off of my canned questions that hopefully y'all are interested in the answer. So while I ask Niki 1 or 2 questions, y'all can put them in the chat now, and I'll read from there. But Niki, so you kind of touched on first generation fatigue and making assumptions and all of that. But I feel like some first generation attorneys feel like when you're the first walking into a firm, whether it's a litigation boutique or a big law firm, there's all these assumptions that, maybe you're starting from scratch. So maybe you don't have, the complete recipe that everyone else does. How do you make sure that doesn't get in your head and mess with your confidence, and also exude confidence? Because I think that matters a lot in the law firm setting. So if you can give us some tips on that, that'd be great.
So if I understand your question correctly, you're like, let's say you switch from criminal to civil and you just don't know what you're doing, right? And or you feel like you don't know what you're doing. I think my biggest advice on that is I always like to look at myself as, just because I have less experience or less knowledge, that does not make me less, period. So this person might be a partner or older or whatever, but I'm an equal. I just have less experience. So I do two things. One, reminding myself of that. I will, um, I have confidence in my ability to learn and get there, even if I don't have confidence that right now I can be as amazing as this person. And the second is professional vulnerability. I will tell, I will ask this person that I'm working with, hey, look, I was in IP litigation for 6 years, but I've never done employment before. What do you think I can read? What do you think I can, what blog do you think I should follow? What conference should I go to? I want to get there as quickly as I can. And there are only two things that can happen. This person, excuse my language, can be a jerk, or sorry, I corrected myself, and basically say, oh, don't worry about it, it will come to you. Or they would really help out and just, if you ask this from multiple people, each one will give you some advice, and I will get it done. Also, if they redline everything and they come back and you make a mistake, I make a contract with myself. I'm a lawyer. I say you're allowed until tonight to be upset about this. If it was really bad, you're allowed until the end of the weekend to be upset about this. And then you forgive yourself because of this mistake. I have the confidence that I might not right now be like everybody else, but I'm going to get there. I'm going to get there because I want it.
Okay. And then another question, because earlier you're talking about taking an inventory, I'm assuming, of the things that you want your path to look like. But in sitting down, taking that inventory, like what should you truly consider? Because, when you and I worked together, I did take that inventory and I made my list and figured out what was important to me. But I'd like you to share with them, exactly what they should be looking at when determining, should I go the criminal route? Should I change and stay on this route? How do I know when it's time to move up? How do I know to stay? Those kind of considerations.
Great question. I wish I remembered what I told you so I can start. But I think the way I like to do it is to have someone sit down and say, okay, well, what is it that I like about what I'm doing right now? And what is it that I don't like? And be as specific as possible. Is it the practice area? Is it the people? Is it you don't make enough money? Is it, I mean, all those things, it can be a combination of all of these things. And then sometimes, like I might sit down and say, well, what I would really like is I am frustrated right now and I'm not happy with my job. But the reason is because I don't have the right team. So that's very easy. You go and build your team. Sometimes it's a little deeper because you have to go back on your resume and just say, well, I really liked being at the DA's office. And, because of this element, but I didn't like that. So, if you go through whether you've had one job or two jobs or three jobs and really look at what you liked, what you didn't like, maybe then it will give you a little bit more of what you want. And it might not be possible that in one move we can get where we want to go. Maybe we just need to get you out of where you are because the people create an environment that just is not going to let you thrive, right? And will sacrifice the practice area or the size of the firm. But I think I would sit down and think about every single thing I love about it, every single thing I don't like about it. And I won't just, when I say take inventory, I won't just also leave it just at what's going on at that firm or at that job, but everything we talked about, all my other areas of life, I will also take inventory when I sit down and do it because I want to see if it's really work related that I need to go. And for you, I think it was.
No, it was. So, last question. This actually comes from the audience. After transitioning to a new job in a new area or firm size, for example, going from government to private or boutique to big law, etc., how long should you stay there after determining that it's not the best fit for you?
Great question. So this is what I was talking about. This is when you really need to sit down and decide what happens. Is it that you're bringing something along with you? Is it the same type of frustrations? Or is it just that you thought, like I went to public interest for 6 months after big law because I thought it was going to be this way. But once I got there, I'm not saying I didn't enjoy it. I'm not saying that it wasn't fulfilling, but I realized it was just not for me because I didn't want to have such an emotional job. I love the courtroom. I love litigation, but I'm not a DA type. I don't want to do it every day, right? So if you think about it, if you just think that you thought one thing, but now that you're trying it, you realize that it's not the right fit for you. I My advice is always life is too short. Like start looking, and but make sure you are. This is not one of those situations where we talked about that. It's really something else that is making you unhappy, and you keep going. But my first job I had for it was a big law job. I was there for 7 months. I started looking after a month, and everybody was like, oh my god, you will die, you cannot do this. Like, it's like you're, as if like my name was going to be in the newspaper and nobody was going to hire me anymore. It's like, and I was like, I waking up every morning depressed, and that's not who I am. It's like when I wake up and I just can't get out of bed, there is just something wrong with this environment, and I'm just going to try and look. And I looked and I didn't jump until I found something that I knew will be better. And it was the same type of job. It was another big law job, but this time I stayed 7 years. So it was really something specific.
Okay, thank you, Nikki. And I said that that was going to be the last question, but after this question, I'm not cutting off questions. It's just we're going to move on to
Okay.
Anne, so you can still pull them in. Just tell me who you want to ask the questions for. But if you can ask this, then we can move on to Anne. So I'm trying to respect the panelists' time. What should you do if your firm culture, well, your work culture / environment encourages not having a work-life balance? Pretty sure they're meaning law firm culture, because I think we're all lawyers here. So yes, what do you do when your law firm culture does not encourage work-life balance?
I don't know of any firms that actually encourage it. It's like, I mean, they might prevent it, but they might, I mean, I hope I'm understanding the question correctly, but I have never heard of a law firm outside the marketing and the interviewing process.
Yeah.
Once I mean, I'm being really blunt. I don't know, Kiara, if it's too much, but like, but when you actually arrive and I whether they say 1,600 billables or no billable requirements, whatever it is, I have in my, I don't know how many years it's been now, 15 years of being in the legal profession, I have never seen one that actually actively encourages it outside the marketing. Now, some encouraged to make sure you take your vacations, but on an ongoing basis they don't do that. So I'm going to take your question as, what if you're at a law firm where there is no work-life
Yes.
balance? So I'm going to take it like that. And it really depends. It depends that if you don't have work-life balance certain times, it could be that practice area. What I have found, especially in private practice, there are many times where it's just work, work, work because it's the client demand or the volume of the work. Other times it could be because they're mismanaging things or they're crazy. It's like that can happen too. So I would assess the situation and see, is this because they just have a lot of work and it's because I'm a corporate lawyer and when we have multiple deals going at the same time, well, then right now life is all about work. But then when things calm down, can I then just politely take some time and now my work-life balance, it's mostly life and not work. And that used to happen to me in 2010. I was an associate and I took 3 weeks off and I went to Tehran. That's the picture behind me. And everybody was just like, what? And I'm like, well, you can't go to Iran more than like in 2 weeks. I need to go longer, but I had worked and worked. But those 3 weeks, I didn't do any work. So I would suggest that if you see that this is just, there's just like a lot of work, be good, build a lot of brownie points, and then go communicate and say, hey, I built this many hours, I am going to do this. And if they don't respect then that you need to have a life, you're getting married, your sister is getting married, whatever, then it might be that you're working with a whole bunch of workaholics who don't also respect their lives.
Well, thank you, Niki, for ending it there. I think that was a powerful last sentence, which takes me, actually would be a great segue to LaKendria, but I'm going to keep my promise to go to Anne so we can break it up a little bit. Anne, I'm going to give you the floor now.
Hello, Kiara and the rest of you young lawyers. Thanks so much for having me. I very much appreciate it. I've been in business for a long time, and I really enjoy working with younger people, because I feel like a lot of the mistakes that I've seen so many of my clients make young can really be fixed. And you say it's a segue to LaKendria, but really, when I was doing my presentation, and I'm about to share my screen and show you some slides, I feel as though there are things in finances, if you don't have your financial life in order, it may impact your career, your mental health, the career choices you make. So with that, I will share my screen. Let's see. 1 second. I can see. There we go. We all here? Great. Well, first of all, I love the name Successful-ish, but hopefully we can chop that ish off and you'll be successful. So, and I notice my graphic here is a little bit of a free fall, and hopefully we can fix that too. So, one thing I named this one, I think I'm going to write a book and call it this: Investing in Financial Literacy. That is really what we want to talk about and what financial literacy means. Or okay, I am muted now. And actually, the truth of the matter is there's no class on money, which is the problem. And what I feel about young lawyers is that you are a special breed, whether you're first gen or next gen, because you have an opportunity to build wealth in your lifetime. You have come out of school with a very specialized education that, if you so choose to do that for some time or the rest of your life, or in, as Niki said, in many different permutations, it'll really serve you. But there's some issues, we're going to talk about. Obviously, what should I be doing with my money? And I just put this in a free flow, sort of threw it up onto the screen, and I'll say it really quick: budgeting, dealing with student debt, saving, contributing to a 401k, saving for retirement, paying off debt, buying a house, buying a car, having a family, taking care of parents, giving to charity, traveling, volunteering, having hobbies. You have to do all of that, but so many times we fall short in one or more. And what I say is, how hard could this be? Well, how hard could it be? A recent FINRA study, which is the FINRA is the regulatory body over the financial industry, study says that 71% of Americans say that they are financially literate. But the same study says that by the age of 40, 66% of these people cannot answer 5 questions on the fundamental concept of money or understand 3 basic financial literacy topics. So what I ask is, what's the disconnect? Well, this is a sort of a macro definition of financial literacy, but it is a difficult process. It involves challenging and modifying long-held beliefs and view around money. We have to be willing to unlearn these beliefs. And that belief might be things that you were told during your childhood about money. Most people were not told anything about money, but and you probably learned it from watching. There's certainly a lot of information out there about money, but what we want to do is move your financial literacy into a different area. So what's in a generation? Your next gen, your first gen. My 9-year-old niece, I just found out, is an alpha gen. So they've already named her. So I'm nothing, because I'm between millennials and baby boomers, so I don't have a gen. I don't know why I didn't get one. but 46% of young lawyers delay buying a home. This is a study that was done last spring by the American Bar Association, their young lawyer division. They have 30% less buying power than in previous generations. 58% delay marriage and children. I get this a lot, saying, well, I'd like to have kids and get married, but we want to wait until we can buy a house. But 70% of millennials cannot afford a home. So if they are rent burdened, which means that more than 30% of your income goes to rent. So if millennials, and I don't know who, you know, sort of the demographic we have on the presentation today, but Gen Y and Z are going to have the same problems in Gen C, which is the COVID generation, which I think are like 1 or 2, but, or, you know, their kids up to, you know, my niece who's 9, who's been homeschooled for the last year. So everybody's going to have the same problem in terms of having less buying power, having more debt, but lawyers are a little bit different. But young investors, this is a study that Charles Schwab did. I'm sorry I didn't give them credit on the screen. 38% have an informed financial plan, but they don't update it because your financial plan is dynamic. It's not static. When we use we have some software that we use to do plans for people. There's big versions, there's small versions, there's beginner, but we always let them share it. We always let them go on and change it and do. We have a what if I traveled more? What if I retired earlier? What if I retired later? Very importantly, 51% don't understand fees. So what we know is that modern portfolio theory, which in 1965 earned the Nobel Prize in economics, says that 95% of the performance of a portfolio is determined by the asset allocation. All it has to be is diversified. The number one thing that can encroach upon this is fees over time. 41% of the respondents do not understand the tax implications of investing. If you're investing short-term in maybe Bitcoin, and you have some short-term gains are taxed as ordinary income. Is this going to throw you into a higher tax bracket? Most people don't know this. They don't know how much they should be putting in their 401k because they're sort of holding on to that money. The number one thing we find is that number one, either people aren't putting as much as they should or possibly can in their 401ks, or they're not properly invested in it. We help young investors with that as well. But here's the real deal. One of my portfolio managers that I ran this presentation by said, well, that's the elephant in the room. I said, it's not an elephant. It's everybody knows about it. This ABA Young Lawyers Division did a survey. The average law school debt is $160,000. It can be much as $300,000, depending on what law school you went to. Did you borrow money for undergrad? 40% say that debt increased after graduation. It affects men and women equally. Interestingly enough, and not surprising, but all ethnicities have a greater debt than whites. Financial stress. So this is where I think I'm sandwiched between, I read a lot of case studies on the ABA website. It had people who had made career choices based on their debt. They wanted to go into the public defender. They wanted to work nonprofit, but they couldn't because they felt they had to pay off their debt. And I feel like they're just not handling it right now. Listen, if you want to pay it off and that's it, that's another thing. But a 2018 Harris poll said that money is a major source of stress for 44% of the people who took it. It's a wide and varied poll. The American Psychological Association poll said that 72% of Americans have been stressed in the last month about money. So you're all going to need LaKendria after this. So it adds to mental health issues, anxiety and depression. It affects relationships, fitness and nutrition. Here's where your career comes in, reduces your professional performance, and obviously affects your overall well-being. And it's not just young people. I have older people, baby boomers, younger, who now are starting to think, I need long-term care. I need to retire. I don't have enough. And most people don't have enough to retire. So that is affecting their health as well. I looked at resources for young lawyers, and I see all sorts of things from meditation, self-care, motherhood, fatherhood, business development, everything, even crafting for stress. But what's missing in that? And I believe it's financial education. So I looked on, they had a couple of, and listen, the holistic program for young lawyers is tremendous. It's wonderful. But they had 3 apps recommended. One was budgeting, one was robo investing, and one was how to save. It's very difficult to think about saving because behavioral psychology comes in. If I tell you in January I think you might have a tax refund. Do you want to invest it? Majority of participants said yes, but then it went down dramatically when right before tax day, I said, you will have a refund. The study showed that the sooner you told people, even you might have a refund, they were more than willing to invest. We are creatures that like to plan. We may not like to plan, but we're certainly more comfortable with planning. So when we talk about needing, financial education, so we can all talk about this. I talk to young people all the time about this, that they have to have a budget. They have to create a financial plan with a professional. Save and adjust the amount as needed. Now, when I say reverse engineer your goals, and you look at the very bottom and it says plan for retirement and set a goal in line with your values. Your values means I'm always going to work nonprofits, so maybe I'll have to work longer. I'm not going to, but I want to have more children. I'm going to pay for their college. Whatever it is that you want to do that's in line with your values, the way you were raised, you reverse engineer. You say, here's how I want to live my life. Here's when I want to retire. Here's how I want to live the rest of my life. And we reverse engineer it. And that's just that we take your budget and we may tell you, you're not going to make this. Here are adjustments you need to make. But one thing we say is to invest in a diversified manner with a professional. And I had to put this on here. I know you all want to ask me about Bitcoin and digital art and environmental investing. All of that has a place. They're alternative investments. They have a place in investing, maybe not when you're this young, but we use transparent investing. And that is that we want to know exactly what we're investing in and what the fees are. We use exchange traded funds, fixed income, equities, very low fees, and dollar cost average. Your 401k, some people, when the market goes down, they get out of their 401k. Well, what does that do? They just solidified their losses. But if they stay in, I always say no money can be made in a bull market. Money is made in a bear market. And why? Especially in a 401k. When the market goes down, you buy more shares at a lower price. It's almost, it's akin to compound investing, where, Albert Einstein said the most powerful force in the universe is compound investing. And this is a guy who discovered the black hole. So it's not about the money you have, but how you manage that money. And I can't emphasize that enough. And Niki said something about self-sabotage. And that's something that I think that we all do as well, is that you self-sabotage not only your career, your life, your love life, whatever it is, but you can also self-sabotage your finances. So when we're talking about holistic wellness, we are talking about the whole being. And that is mental health, it's career choices, and the sandwich between in there is your financial health. So I thank you for the opportunity to speak to you. We love working with you. I'm going to stop my share and see if anybody has any questions. I know Kiara has some hidden gems.
I am sure I do, just to fill the gaps. First, one of my questions is, I've talked to my friends about this personally. What should you consider? So you have student loans, and a lot of people haven't been blessed enough to be able to pay them off just quite yet. We're all praying that Biden comes through and saves us all. But what should you consider when trying to figure out, should you pay down student loan debt or purchasing a home? Because one of your slides said that millennials, are not debt burdened, but rent burdened. And so to get out of that, the only way is to actually get in somewhere that is rent free and go to mortgage where you're investing in your long-term goals. So what should you be considering when you have both in your hand?
I think that's interesting. First of all, I think it depends on what your personal goals are. So, well, first of all, I did not mention that, but Biden or the government, he's not going to just do it himself. Hopefully, if we have some, it'll be public loan forgiveness, not private loan. Now, what I hope will come through is that they'll offer some tax benefits if you do have private loans. I don't know if they're going to do 50%. If we're up to me, they do 100%. That'd be it. This is a generation that has something that no one else has ever had, and I'm not sure they ever will have. But when you talk about what to do first, it's your priorities, and it's also how much debt you have. And I've had people come to me and say, well, I did a forbearance. All you're doing is pushing that in the future. And we have a nice Excel spreadsheet where we say, okay, well, here's what happens. Here's how much more you will pay. So why aren't you making enough money now to pay it off? And I can tell you, if you don't have a budget, if you don't have a plan, if you don't understand how many times you need to eat out every week, then you can't answer that question. Because if you say to me, here's an example, well, I want to get married and have kids. However old I am, I'm, in a relationship, I want to get married and have kids, or I'm not in a relationship, I want to have kids. I want a home. I want a home for kids. Maybe you don't want a home and have kids. Maybe you want to just put the cart before the horse and have kids first. It also depends what neighborhood you're going to live in. One thing that's happening, like, for example, it's starting to happen in Houston. It's happening in Austin, where they can't get in. Their housing market's so hot, they can't get in, to the house. I mean, they literally can't afford to go above the asking price. But I would say then also, you want to get married, have kids, own a house, whatever it is, let's look at how much money you have and what you're spending, because you can't really answer the question of what you can do until you get a snapshot, not even a snapshot, a real picture of what you have. So that's where we do our financial plan, and we plug everything in, and then we can play with it and say, okay, if you pay more on your loan, you'll pay it off sooner. If you save money here, you can put that in your house pot. So it's also a question of what buckets you want to put money in.
Okay, and earlier you said that a lot of baby boomers are finding themselves not having enough money to retire. And so what do you think that folks should be doing now? I mean, we all hear, putting into retirement, but how much, how do you figure out how to back into a number that will make you comfortable?
Well, it's a little bit tougher when you're younger, because if you're in your 20s and 30s, obviously your portfolio is going to look a whole lot different than someone in their 50s, because it's going to be you can afford to be a lot more aggressive. And by aggressive, I mean you're in a more growth portfolio. But and also, when someone's 40 or 50, we start asking questions like, where are you going to live in retirement? Are you going to sell your house? For someone in their 20s and 30s, are you going to, my brother has 5 kids that are about 6 years, 5 boys that are within 6 years of each other. There were twins in there. What he said was, I will pay for your college, but I will not pay for grad school. So they're going to work their way through grad school. One of them just got a full ride to a grad school. It's great. So that's just what he's decided. Other parents will say, I'm putting my oxygen mask on first. And a lot of times in retirement, you have to do that. I'm going to say the most powerful tool, let's forget student debt, let's forget buying a house. The most powerful tool anyone has that they don't take advantage of is your 401k and your ability to keep investing in it and be diversified. I know a lot of law firms that I've talked to don't have matching programs because they figure, we're investing in you, you're investing in us. But there are other ways you can save for retirement too. There's outside IRAs that have deferred capital gains. They may not come off the top of your taxes. So it's a question of, we don't like to let the tax tail wag the investment dog. So one thing is just putting money away for retirement right now, and then make the decisions about retirement. I will tell you that the people who cannot retire now did not put enough money in their 401k period, or they took money out of it.
Mm. Okay. Well, I don't see any other questions. So I will thank you, Ann, for that lovely presentation. Again, you guys, if you have any questions that pop up, whether it's for Ann, LaKendria, or Niki towards the end, when we'll open it back up before we close, please put it in the chat. And now I'll turn it over to LaKendria Ellis.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you again, Kiara, and the entire community for having me today. I am super excited. I also want to thank Miss Niki, because I can definitely tell that you've been through some therapy based on your presentation and your sense of wellness. And thank you, Miss Ann, because I definitely needed a lot of your tips. So all of this was very helpful for me. I'm going to go ahead and start by sharing my screen. I have a PowerPoint presentation to share with everybody. So please feel free to take notes. And if you have any questions, just let me know as we go along. So this is an event talking about first generation attorneys. And even though I'm not a first generation attorney, I am a first generation mental health professional, and I have friends who have shared this experience. And this is near and dear to my heart because being a therapist and having friends who are close to me who have gone through this experience, it's kind of given me an eye opener, a different type of view on what it feels like to be successful in this specific arena. So for the purpose of this presentation, because I am an educator and therapist, I kind of wanted to shed some light on what we're talking about when we mean first generation. So when I did my research, first generation lawyer generally refers to law students and recent law graduates whose parents did not attend college. First generation law students may be less wealthy than their peers whose parents are professionals, and many first generation law students grew up in another country. So maybe this is the demographic that I'm speaking to today. And then because I do have friends who have experienced this, I wanted to do more research. So if you're watching or listening and you've gone through any of these experiences, go ahead and put your hand up in the chat. So this is Maggie Wilder, and one of her things and one of her experiences, she said, there is a huge knowledge and resource gap, particularly when it comes to networking. As a first generation professional, you're unlikely to have family ties or connections to the legal field. So you have to work to build those on your own. I've heard those several times. Other challenges can include lack of understanding of social norms and office politics, which can lead to a lack of confidence. First generation lawyers also may not have mentors with similar backgrounds to provide career guidance. And a first generation lawyer who started a firm and currently practices in-house commented, experience is far too expensive of a way to find out. And just to share some of my experience and conversations with my friends, I remember going to one of my friends' graduations. I'm not going to put you on the spot here, so don't worry about that. But one of my friends graduated from NYU Law. And I remember going to her graduation, and her parents, they're from Nigeria. So they moved here from Nigeria. And they had to leave the graduation. So we ended up having to move her out of her dormitory. And I remember looking around and having conversations with her, and most of her classmates, their family members had went to NYU Law. So this was like home for them. And most of them had owned some type of stock or investment in NYU. And I remember looking at her, because I'm a true empath and therapist. I remember looking at her and asking, how did it feel with all of these people around you who were so accustomed to this environment? Did you ever feel intimidated? Did you ever feel like you didn't belong? Very loaded questions, but that's just who I am as a therapist. And she did express at times she did feel this, but it's something that she learned how to navigate. And for many of you, I know you're out of law schools, you're practicing lawyers. There are things that you have to build. There's resilience, and we'll talk about that later. But there are things that you will learn how to build that will help you along the way. And the first thing I can tell you is to prioritize yourself. So one of the things I did was did more research, and here's some more examples. People in law school were much wealthier than I expected. One young lady said, I wore jeans and sweatshirts to class, but some of my classmates took on the notion of dressing the part of being a lawyer while in school. Once I was in the library, two students came up to a friend of mine who was in an earshot. One of them said, we thought you would have talked to her about her appearance by now. Some people feel inadequate about what they wear. When I started, I did not understand corporate speak and the buzzwords people use. So I tried to emulate higher ups and how they refer to things. I started using sports analogies, the in-house lawyer commented. So there's a lot of inadequacies in terms of how to speak in this type of environment. How many of you guys have experienced that as first generation lawyers, if any? Okay, wow. Okay, so it's a common experience. Next, I thought this one was particularly important because it says it's really hard to get directions when you are the blueprint. Many of you guys are feeling the pressure of being the first generation lawyer. So you are the blueprint. You are who everyone is looking at for guidance. You are who everybody in your family goes to for law questions, which I'm sure can be very exhausting. And we're going to talk about how to navigate that. But these are some of the challenges people experience. Some people said they were the first person and their extended family to go to college, let alone attend any graduate program. And then this one really caught my eye. It said, I felt so alone due to my parents and family members not fully understanding the law school educational system here. Sometimes it can be difficult because not only are you the first generation, but no one knows what you're going through. So some of your family members may have been so happy that you're lawyers and my child is a lawyer, but they don't understand the mental health toll, the financial toll, everything that it takes for you to even withstand this position. So there are a lot of challenges that you guys probably haven't talked about, but I hope that I can answer your questions and be of some assistance today. And on top of the challenges that come along with being a first generation lawyer, lawyers in themselves experience these specific mental health conditions. So anxiety, that's 61.1%, depression, 45.7%, social anxiety, 16.1%, ADHD, 12.5%, panic disorder, 8%, and bipolar, a 2.4%. Anxiety can be amplified. Anxiety and depression really can both be amplified by just feeling inadequate or just being a first generation lawyer. So what I want to say before I get started with the tips is I want you guys to start taking inventory of how you feel. Mental health, financial health, all of these things are so important. So start taking inventory about how you feel as a lawyer and always make yourself a priority. And this is one of my favorite quotes. It says, mental health is not a destination, but a process. It's about how you drive, not where you're going. So even if you've never taken inventory about your mental health, there will never be a time in which you've arrived. It's something that you constantly have to and should be working on in this journey. And I want you all to be present with yourselves. I know you live busy lives. I know being a lawyer can be stressful, but I want you to constantly be present with yourself and always check in with yourself as a lawyer with all the pressures that you have. So here's the guide to protecting your mental health. And I'm going to speed it up because I want to make sure I respect everybody's time. Anxiety, we all know that anxiety is a feeling of worry, fear, and unease, which can be amplified when you're first generation. So one of the things you can do to manage anxiety, recognizing anxiety and what it causes it. One of the things I tell my clients all the time, and I want to reiterate it because I want this to stay in your brain. I want you guys to have this. If you take nothing away from my presentation, take this away, is awareness. Many people are not aware of what they're going through. Many people are not aware that they're experiencing stress due to being a first generation lawyer. Many people are just not aware of what anxiety is, depression is. So it's important that you recognize what you're going through so you can seek help and advocate for yourself. Another thing in managing anxiety, practice mindfulness. With my clients, sometimes I do body scans, we do breathing, we do mindfulness activities. One of the things you can do if you're feeling like you're all over the place is set your intention for today. I know you guys have a lot of billable hours and there are things that you have to get done, but what do I want to get done today? If nothing else is accomplished, what do I want to get done for today? Breathing and grounding techniques. I do these a lot. Okay, so breathing and grounding techniques are going to be very great. Limit interactions with anxiety-provoking stimuli. Now, this may be difficult because your environment may be anxiety-provoking, but anything outside of your environment that you can control, anything within your locus of control, limit your interactions with those things, and then take breaks throughout the day, whether that's a nap, whether that's to take a walk around your building, your facility, whatever it is, clear your mind so you don't always feel immersed in your environment. Depression. This is very common amongst lawyers. This is actually very, very common, and it's the feeling of sadness or loss of interest. So one of the things that I tell all of my clients with depression, and I'll let you guys read through this as I speak, but the key to coping with depression is really finding balance. So it's a mix of finding things that you have pleasure and purpose. And those are the two key words I want you to take away from this: pleasure and purpose. Yes, I work, so that serves a purpose in managing my finances and freelance and pleasure, serving my life. But what do I need to do to enhance my life? Yes, I work, but what are some things I can add to enhance the value of my life? Whether that be, if you're looking to date more, go on dates when you have the time. If you're looking to lose weight, maybe that means you exercise more. Healthy exercise and diet, that is key. I know you guys live a busy lifestyle, but what you put in your body is so important to how you feel. So please take inventory of what you're eating. Understanding your personality type. Most lawyers are perfectionists, and understanding what you can manage, what's on your plate, what is everything I have on my plate, but what are some things I can delegate and give to other people? You don't have to do everything. And trust me, there are other people that can help you. Identify your support system. Give yourself some grace, develop a self-care routine, whatever that looks like for you. I know with lawyers, it can be difficult, and connect to people who are close to you. And I think Niki said this in her presentation, but finding mentors or talking to people who can uplift you, especially if you're a first generation lawyer, finding people who speak your language, who understand, that way you'll realize that you're not going through this experience alone. Stress and burnout. Burnout is real, okay? Especially with the past year that we have had, burnout is a real thing. And what most people don't know, and I'll let you in on this little tip, many of you may not take it because you're perfectionists, but burnout is actually recognized in terms of a diagnosis. So now you can take FMLA out on your jobs for burnout. So if you're feeling like you're burned out, you can actually take leave, medical leave from your jobs for burnout, but it's a prolonged stress. But before we get there, how can we manage burnout? We can prioritize and practice self-care as early as often, talk to our supervisors, talk to our managers, recognize and reject the notion that I'll take better care of myself once a blank happens. Start taking care of yourself now, and then focus on one thing at a time. The last thing I would say is, again, find balance. So a lot of these things are going to intertwine, but I would like for you to try to find some type of balance in your life. And this is something I added because when you are the first generation attorney in your family, being in these spaces in which you feel uncomfortable, a lot of people may quit or give up because they lack confidence and they may feel inadequate. So what can we do to boost our self-esteem as first generation attorneys? Take care of yourself, recognize and acknowledge all the wins. Niki said this in her presentation. I think this is also important. Sometimes you don't realize how much you've accomplished. So taking inventory of what you've done to kind of boost your self-esteem. Remember the hard work and determination it took to get to and through law school will carry you far in your career. You have everything you need to succeed. Create a success jar. So when you're feeling down, you can pull out your successes and remind yourself, yes, I am this person. Yes, I've accomplished these things. And then contact a therapist or life coach to get to the root of the issues. Sometimes you can't work through things on your own. You need some assistance, and we are here to help. When should you ask for help? As soon as possible. And what does help look like? You guys actually have a lawyer assistance program, and you can always comment or contact me if you need any assistance. And I hope this was helpful, and I try to rush through it as quickly as possible. Yes. All right. And I am done.
Thank you so much for that, LaKendria. Actually, one of the things that I wanted to ask about is really more geared towards first generation attorneys. And that is, what do you do when you are sitting at a barbecue and you have family members asking you legal questions and you don't want to be rude, but you want to create boundaries because you're on the verge of burnout? How do you do that?
So this is you answered your own question, essentially. This is where you set the boundaries. One of the things I did, even as a therapist, because my family always has questions about being a therapist. When I'm off the clock, I don't want to talk about work. And these are my non-negotiables. So I don't talk about it. And I mean, at first people thought it was very rude, but these are the boundaries that you set for yourself and you reinforce them. So yes, people are going to try to overstep that, Kiara, because I know I've overstepped my boundaries with you a couple of times, but of course people are going to try to overstep that. But a part of boundaries is the reinforcement piece. And we constantly have to reinforce those boundaries in order for them to be effective.
Okay, and then you also at the end of your presentation said to either seek out a therapist or a life coach. What's the difference? And when do you need either one?
So therapists, we're kind of, so the difference is licensure really. And I'm happy that you asked this question. So a life coach, therapists, we go to school for mental health counseling. So we have different ways in which we have to govern our practice. So we have to look at different modalities of treatment. We have to do, so we have to verify and do like solution focused therapy, or we have to say what type of therapy we're going to be using. Life coaches, however, they don't practice therapy. They're able to give you life skills based on their experiences, based on what they've gone through life. And it's really not governed by any specific or ordinance. We have rules that we have to kind of follow. I'm saying it as nicely as possible, but we have rules that we're governed by. So that's the biggest difference.
Okay. And Niki brings up a very good point. Tell them your billable rate and they'll stop asking questions. Yeah, you know, they will.
I've tried that before.
Yeah. Well, thank you, you guys. And again, I have something to kind of give away here at the end, but while I'm doing that, y'all are more than capable, more than welcome of asking maybe 1 or 2 questions so we can let our panelists go, because we've now gone over 11 minutes. But this year, because the last year was such a success, that we applied for a HYLA grant, which is Texas Young Lawyers Association, and we got it to put this on. We actually were supposed to do it in person, and y'all were going to have food and swag bags and all these things, but still the Rona is the black cloud over us right now. So instead, we were able to give all of our speakers speaker fees, and Niki was kind enough to re-gift a portion of her speaker fee back to HYLA. So she is gifting 3 sessions, 1-hour sessions of her coaching services. And because I don't have a list of everyone, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my email address in the chat. And the first 3 people who email me say, I want in, they get it. And that's it. So I'll put it in right now. This is my shortest email. This is why y'all are getting this one instead of my work. So while we're waiting for our 3, and there is a deadline. You have to use your sessions within, already got 1 person in. Good job hitting that, I guess, copy and paste very quickly, Brianna. So you have 90 days to use Niki's services. I'm sure she'll reach out to you and tell you that, but we really want to let y'all know that it is not a forever thing. And I'm buzzing again. So we have Valerie, Shanisa, and Brianna. Those are all for career coaching. So no more for that. Those are all given away. But it looks like
notice LaKendria and I just said we'll match.
Oh, that is so nice. Well, you know what? I feel like I'm at an auction at this point. So
I'm signing up for Ann's. No, I'm just kidding.
Financial advice.
Absolutely. So the next 3 people will be auctioning off, will be given 3 financial coaching sessions. And is that what we're going to call 1 hour?
Sure.
Okay. So the next 3 people, the first one that I have is Brittany. Do we have 2 more folks coming in? And I'm going to write this down before I forget or my emails go away.
And a lot of people will call you. They just won't do it in public. They'll all be calling you.
Well,
yeah.
You're going to get the most.
Lana, I got you down. So that is the second person. And then let's see, we need 1 more person to email me to fill the spot for Ann. I'm very sure that y'all can fill it. If not, I'll just start.
No, but Kiara can, like, they might not know that. Can they be greedy if they volunteered for one? If they want one thing, they can get.
I just need y'all to email me. So yeah. I don't care if I get multiple emails, because we have now 4 spots. So we have 1 more spot to fill for Ann and 3 spots to fill for LaKendria. So what you can email me again.
Yeah, just have them email you. I am grateful to be on this panel, but I actually have a client that I have to get ready for. So I have to leave. But thank you all so much for this opportunity. This was beautiful.
Thanks.
Got it.
Nice to meet you.
Thank you. Thank you guys. And actually I'm seeing I just need one more person, so I'll let you guys go. I so appreciate all three of you all today. I am sure that when I go to maybe a different committee next year, that we'll reinvent this and tailor this to whatever committee that will be sponsoring this for next year. But it was great to have you all and to share y'all with these HYLA members. And I really hope you guys that y'all utilize these resources, because these women are absolutely fantastic. And I use them in my personal life. All right, guys. Well, I'll end the meeting with that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Nice to meet you, Ann.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks.
Have a good one. Bye-bye.